Story 1. My go-to phrase ever since I heard it in middle school is, "You aren't pretty enough to be stupid." The girl was devastated. Story 2. In response to a woman telling him he appeared to be quite drunk at a party, Winston Churchill said, "I am drunk, but tomorrow morning I will be sober, and you will still be ugly." Story 3. Somewhere in the world, there is a tree that is working tirelessly to produce oxygen for you to breathe. Find it and apologize. Story 4. You look like the type of man who turns a chocolate bar upside down just to feel the veins on his tongue. Story 5. You are about as useful as an Amish electrician, or you are so stupid you could screw up a wet dream. Story 6. If I ordered a truck full of unhelpful people and it showed up with just you in the back, I would still get my money's worth. Story 7. In high school in the mid-1990s, there was a student who was picked on by the same people during gym class. One of the bullies called the student a coward one day. The student replied, "If I am a coward, this is the closest you will ever get to one." That was the end of the bullying. Story 8. I was at a high school soccer match when a kid yelled to the referee after a disputed call, "Hey referee, get off your knees. You are blowing the game." Story 9. I envy you. Every day your life is full of wonder and discovery since your goldfish brain cannot retain two thoughts at the same time. Story 10. As someone with first-hand experience in oral sex, that is the most absurd thing I have ever heard. Story 11. One of the best stories was one my father told me. I was commenting on how unattractive hockey players looked. We talked for a few minutes, and then in the kindest voice imaginable, he said, "How come you never played?" He just sat there as I took several seconds to process what he said, at which point we both laughed very hard. Story 12. From an old Irishman, so I think the accent helps. For reference, Egypt means idiot. He is such a feckin' idiot he would take second place in an idiot contest. To which you would obviously ask why not first? Because he is a feckin' idiot. Story 13. My go-to phrase has always been, "You are living proof of reproductive anal sex." For your information, I have yet to meet a boss who appreciates hearing that. Story 14. The best ones I have heard were from my two friends back to back. One was black and the other was Filipino. The Filipino told the other, "You have strawberry picking hands." Then my black friend responded, "I have never seen an ashy Asian before." He was ashy, and it is true. I did not know Asian people could get ashy. Story 15. I think this is from Scrubs. I have always loved it. There are two things I hate about you, and it is your face. Story 16. You are the reason the Power Rangers had to yell out their colors at the beginning of the fight, or you are the reason there are instructions on the shampoo bottle. Story 17. The only way something intelligent could come out of your mouth is if my private parts start listening to National Public Radio. Story 18. It seems that the best part of you ran down the crack of your mother's backside and ended up as a brown stain on the mattress. Story 19. I know less than half of you half as well as I should like. And I like less than half of you half as well as you deserve. Bilbo Baggins, Fellowship of the Ring. Story 20. It's not because you feel useful in life that you aren't useless to us. I even used that one myself after taking it once. It breaks a lot of legs. Story 21. My friend broke into my computer and changed the device name to "I'm disabled." I was high on painkillers after having both my wrists filled with metal parts following a serious snowboarding accident. I reacted in the strangest way, simultaneously wanting to both hysterically cry and laugh. I still can't do a push-up, but we are adapting and staying active. On a side note, there is a rap song called "I'm Unstable," but he kept singing "I'm disabled" to me in that tone. The kid also took care of me during my recovery. Story 22. I am a bit biased on this as I am the one who gave it. I knew a guy who was a bully. He would pick on people physically smaller than him, usually in a high-pitched mocking tone. One day, I got sick of it and asked him, "Hey, why is your voice so high? Since you have a kid already, I could have sworn your testicles would have dropped by now." He got upset but walked away. I am the same size as him, so I was not a target for him. Story 23. In a group chat, when someone was being quiet, we started chatting harmless things about him. If little Timmy could read, he'd be furious. Story 24. I wish I were dead so I could harm your ancestors. Not joking, it was real. I guess Turkish people already understood. Story 25. Somebody told me I look like the boy from Where the Wild Things Are if he were being mistreated by the wild things. Story 26. That one YouTube short where someone says your wieners are the size of a Tic Tac, and the little kid replies, "That's why your mom's breath smells so good." Story 27. You have had more sausages in you than the air fryer. A lady at a mental health hospital disliked a member of staff, and I heard this from down the hall in the lounge area. I had to painfully stifle my laugh as I consulted with the doctor about their medication needing review. Story 28. Carol Lombard had just divorced Clark Gable. She was asked what she thought about him being called the King of Hollywood. She said, 1 inch less and he'd be the Queen of Hollywood. Story 29. The insults that I come up with in the shower make me think, damn, I should have said that, instead of staying silent during the previous encounter. Story 30. In response to your girlfriend is unattractive. At least I have one. You have a right hand and thoughts and prayers. Story 31. If he carried a conversation like he carried his weight, he would be more interesting. Was said about my over 210-pound former friend who was the most unresponsive person I have ever known. Story 32. Baltimore Mayor William Donald Schaefer replying to a heckler. The only thing that exceeds the ignorance of your remark is the ugliness of your face. Story 33. Teammates who were both African American were going back and forth on a bus ride home. They eventually started joking about light skin and dark skin differences. It ended when one of them said, "You are so black that when you get out of the car, the oil light comes on." Even the bus driver started laughing. Story 34. You like to pass gas into balloons and hide them in your closet. I had this one directed at me by a 12-year-old, and I kept it for future use. It is stunningly specific and juvenile. Excellent work. Story 35. My 8-year-old daughter got so mad she screamed at her older brother and called him a shit-talking mushroom. She was trying to say shiitake mushroom to teeter that thin line. She failed, but my wife and I thought it was hilarious. Story 36. Did your intelligence quotient reach room temperature? Sorry, but I do not have the patience or materials to explain it to you. Story 37. Allegedly from a countess to Winston Churchill. Sir, you are drunk. Churchill replied, and you, Bessie, are ugly. But I shall be sober in the morning, and you will still be ugly. Story 38. So we are not exactly talking about people whose mental elevator even remotely gets anywhere near the top floors. You may not be the least intelligent person on earth, but you better hope he does not die. I do not have the time nor the patience to explain this to you. So inbred, the family tree is a wreath. The Trump legacy remains unburdened by competence. A face like a bulldog licking off a nettle. Story 39. Two are tied. Your mother is a beautiful woman, but she gave birth to a fool. If you were with my wife, I would be only half mad. Story 40. Most of these are unpleasant. The best insults are humorous between friends, not things invented to say to someone who reached your soulmate before you did. Story 41. A man standing outside was arguing with a woman on the apartment balcony. He, if you were a man, I would come up there and kick your ass. She, if you were a man, I would come down there and kick your ass. Story 42. My partner's ex-boyfriend once called me a dry lunch, meaning boring. I'll be honest, I was very impressed, and it remains in my mind 5 years later. It was that good and caught me completely off guard. Story 43. Helen Mirren's character calls another character the mayor of Comfortshire in the show Mobland. Story 44. Saw a child make an obscene gesture towards another child. The child who was offended yelled, "Is that your intelligence quotient or your sperm count?" I laughed. Story 45. When my wife was having our first child, the hospital ward had some difficult patients who, if they were lucky, are now in social care. I had no sleep for 50 hours. My poor wife was suffering terribly during a heat wave. It became so severe that my wife and baby nearly died. While waiting for an emergency cesarean section slot and putting on blue scrubs to go in with her, I overheard a family talking about how they were still waiting for their benefits that week and that they had stolen a wheelchair, which the teenage father was messing around with from outside a ward. The grandfather, probably my age, was complaining about craving a cigarette. I lost my temper and shouted at them, "Hey, can't you go somewhere else? My wife is trying to give birth to your kid's future boss." One word insults wise, I have two with an extra third. I first heard them when I started secondary school in the United Kingdom, and they are wank stain, cock cheese, runner up, discharge. Story 46. I will have to translate this one, and it is not easy. I hope I captured the essence. I will drag my courage over the graves of your departed family members. Story 47. You look like the south end of a northbound horse. Just watching people figure it out brings a little bit of joy to me. Story 48. You are such a loser. If there was a competition for the biggest loser, you would get second place. They respond with something like, "Why am I not first? Because you are such a loser." Story 49. Medium talent. Bill Murray screamed at Chevy Chase during a fight right before the broadcast of Chevy's first return to Saturday Night Live. So devastatingly accurate. Story 50. You've got a forehead the size of Jupiter and an ego to match. I don't really remember insults from other people, but I said that once. My teacher spit out her water and tried to be mad, laughing my face off. Story 51. Your mother has relations with infected goats. English was not his first language, but I do not think it lost anything in translation. Story 52. Someone noticed I am gay on my Facebook profile and told me I look like the kind of person who would do anything for bus money and still end up walking. Story 53. When my youngest was around 8 or 9, I heard her defeat a cousin with this gem. Oh, shut up. You're just mad because there aren't any yellow crayons left, and that's your favorite color. Story 54. What you have just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul. Story 55. If you had him count his balls 3 times, he wouldn't get the same answer twice. He would mess up sleeves in a vest. He hasn't got the intelligence God promised a brass jackass. Story 56. Who is this clown? Because it implies they are a clown and not even one of the better-known clowns. Story 57. You are about as useful as a porcupine in a balloon factory. You are worse than chicken droppings on a pump handle. Story 58. The hardest working thing in here is your shoes. If your nudes were free, they would be overpriced. I bet your caseworker is proud of you. Give me your worst. That's the same thing your mom said at the orphanage. You are so fat you could sell shade. If I wanted a comeback, I would have scraped it off your mom's face. Story 59. Big-bellied stand-up comic Ralphie May's reply to being asked when he last saw his own kid. In the reflection from your mom's greasy forehead. Story 60. You are the reason I look right at roundabouts. For the United States, reverse direction for countries that drive on the opposite side of the road. Story 61. A man gets angry after a failed advance toward one of our friends and called her a derogatory name. I'm just glad I don't have to live your life. Story 62. The only time you have been affected was by genetics. I saw a video on YouTube of a gay man roasting a woman who wanted to cut the line at a nightclub. Story 63. Always tickled by pixels. Sean Bean says to the enthusiasts, anybody who doesn't need to be here, follow me to the support area. That means you too. Story 64. The girl was so taken aback by a guy asking her out that she said, no, followed by a generic hurtful insult. She actually said, generic hurtful insult. Story 65. My friend and I were driving when someone cut us off badly, and he yelled, nice driving, you mustache fool. I have never laughed so hard. Something about it just struck me. Story 66. Not really the best, But the one I remember the most is one I saw on Reddit a long time ago. A girl started a huge fight in a school by saying, "Your head looks like a tangerine." Story 67. I have just done a deep dive on Star Wars fan fiction, so I vote for his brain cell is lonely translated from Mandalorian. Story 68. 1. Your rear end is in a hat. Pull your head out of it. 2. Your behavior is so unpleasant I feel sick when I am near you. 3. Your mother is larger than I am, but you know what they say, she isn't a lady if she isn't more than 380 pounds. Story 69. I heard a child say, "You look like my mother would talk to her friends about you over tea." And I could tell that one hurt. Story 70. Someone said to me, after I randomly glanced over at them and made awkward eye contact, "What are you looking at?" My response, as I looked them up and down, was, "Not much." I know they did not catch it. Story 71. If intelligence were fuel, you would not have enough to run a small go-kart 2 laps around a Cheerio. Story 72. 20 years ago, a third-grade black child once said I had a bubble-gum chewing nose. I still think about it to this day. Story 73. I cannot walk down the street to buy a pack of cigarettes without running into 9 men you have been with. Story 74. Work with a producer on a film. I realized I was about to get fired from the show. I said, "It must be nice working as long as you have in the industry without once losing your amateur status." Story 75. Drill sergeants are notorious for their insults without using expletives. My favorites were, "That's not acne. Those are scars from the hangar." And "Watching you do push-ups is like a monkey humping a football." Story 76. I read this on AskReddit some time ago, and it stuck with me. You are not acting like the person Mr. Rogers believes you can be. Story 77. Not sure where I first heard it, but "you pick hotels based on how comfortable the seat in the corner looks" is my personal favorite. Story 78. It's Friday, but you're like Monday. I was a shy kid working for an industrial cleaning firm when I was 19. I started to open up, and this is what I received after working one-to-one with a great guy. I worked with him for 8 months before he moved on. He said this to me as he dropped me off at home after a shift. Story 79. When asked what he thinks about a trainee at work, my brother responded, "I don't think about him at all." That stuck with me. Story 80. Former boss was criticizing an employee in a team meeting and said, "Millions of sperm, and you were the quickest one. If that is not proof there is no justice in the world, I do not know what is." Story 81. A personal favorite of mine is describing somebody as much use as tits on a fish, or the family-friendly version, as much use as socks on a snake. Story 82. Tough talk from someone who came out of the donation pile. It turns out he was adopted. I did not know that, but he was a jerk, so it made it all the sweeter. Story 83. A few years ago, there was a Reddit post asking people what they thought about the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority General Manager Steve Poftak. One person commented, "If he were any stupider, they would have to water him." Story 84. Not the best, but I wrote a few as a personal creative writing project. Your voice screams to the world like Fran Drescher yodeling with a seagull fight for a chorus. I poke my ears with an ice pick and curse God for ever giving me hearing when I hear your shrill cackle disgrace the very air I am then forced to breathe. The deaf thank God for their merciful gift when they see life die out at the shriek of the facehole you call your mouth. Birds fly into windows. Cats choke on their hairballs. You befoul the ether with your blubbering utterances. You can go to hell in a Yugo at 5 miles per hour, through 1,000 miles of Nevada emptiness with Tom Arnold and Phyllis Diller copulating in the back seat. Story 85. I called a kid an offensive name the other day in virtual reality chat because he was being difficult, and he did not even respond, not even a sigh. He just stopped talking completely, and then later he apologized to me. Story 86. 2. I can add. I once saw a man call another man a motherfucker. The man then shot back, "You mean your mother told?" The other one comes from William Shakespeare. "I would beat thee, but I would infect my hands." That kind of goes hard. Story 87. I was jogging down a path and saw a lady walking with her dog. I said, "Excuse me," and she gave me a very disgusted look. Then, to whoever she was speaking to on the phone, she said, "Why is this overweight Mexican talking to me?" Story 88. I know karate. Ballet for boys, you are going to be wearing your bollocks for earrings if you do not leave. He did not. He went down like a 10-pound hooker. Story 89. One of the male workers came into my office and said, "I'm going to call you boobs because your breasts are so big." From then on, he called me boobs, which then turned into big tits or tits. He would say, "Good morning, big tits," or "Would you like a coffee, tits?" In the end, everyone in the office called me Tits or Big Tits. So my nickname became Tits or Big Tits, and I still get called that by everyone I know today. I can never forget I have big breasts. Story 90. You look like the kind of person who eats a Snickers upside down just to feel the vein texture on your tongue. Story 91. Said about a handsome but useless politician. You can look deep into his eyes and see the back of his head. Also, from a maritime girl I knew, she would say, "They were as dumb as a bag of hammers." Story 92. My grandmother once told me, "You are less intelligent than a screen door on a submarine." She is the best. I use that one all the time now. Story 93. You are as useful as teats on a bull. The gene pool is deep enough, but the filter broke years ago. You need to start each conversation with "once upon a time," because you are telling me a fairy tale. Story 94. One of my friends was insulted with a comment like, "You look like the type of person who eats bananas for their shape and not their taste." Story 95. There was a man in a wheelchair who was very annoying to me and all of my friends. He kept going on and on about how great his life was, and it was always about him. It was really irritating. One of my friends said, "Man, I hate that man. I would rather go up a flight of stairs to get away from him." Story 96. I'm a big darts player, and one of the guys I play with said to another, "You couldn't hit 26 with 3 hedgehogs." Very subject specific, but it had me rolling. Story 97. Not the best, but out of all insults I received, "Your head looks like a pineapple," has stuck with me until this day. Story 98. I have a few. Your head is so far up your rear end, your mother would struggle to tell the difference between a before and after shot of you on the Titan submarine. That is a bit wordy, but there are variations of it. You look like you need a bookmark for a greeting card, and so on. Story 99. You are so incapable that if it were a competition, you would get second place because you are incapable of getting first. Story 100. I'm fond of my grandfather's insult. Go lay down so the lice can eat. Story 101-1. Does your behind ever get jealous of what comes out of your mouth? I have a feeling your father used the wrong hole when you were conceived. Story 102. That's right, I killed your master. And now I'm going to kill you with your own sword, no less, which in the very immediate future will become my sword. The bride. You don't have a future. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.